The Conspiracy of Standards. Alphabet soup. The problem with regulations. ANSI, ASCII, ASTM, SAE, CSI, OSHA, EPA, SWEEPY. What are these? Well, they're all an elaborate conspiracy to keep the plebeians from obtaining multi-million-dollar government contracts. That's right, they're elaborate barriers to entry requiring you to be a millionaire with tons of free time on your hands or an industry insider before you can get a piece of the government action. Or you could be a genius like me and figure it out on your own. Hi, I'm Duncan Willoughby, and I'm going to introduce you to a part of the world you didn't know existed. Something you couldn't have known because you're not an engineer like me, or a millionaire. Today, I'm going to bring you exclusive access to a world guarded by monetary and intellectual barriers to entry. Engineering and the Conspiracy of Standards. Say I hear the government is expanding a water treatment facility and spending $5 million on it. And I'm a small mom and pop store that wants a piece of the action. I see that they're buying a ton of pipe, like a few $1,000,000 worth. And I like working with steel, so I decide I'm gonna manufacture steel pipe. Great. I open up their bid, and 200 pages into the text, I read a little line that says, steel pipe sizes 4 through 12 shall be Schedule 80 iron pipe size, meeting the requirements of ASTM A53 Type E or S, Grade B. And maybe a little later I read, all plumbing shall conform to the requirements of the California Plumbing Code. What? I mean, as a mom and pop, I'm like, what does all this mumbo jumbo mean? What are these requirements? Well, first you're going to need to learn the lingo. A set of requirements is called a specification. In effect, the writer of the specification is specifying what type of product they would like to receive. Simplest example is, I want a high-speed internet cable. That's actually too vague because someone will come back to you saying, how fast? If they're kind enough to ask. They might just give you repinned scrap wire recycled from a 25-year-old computer their grandpa was throwing away. But if they are nice, they may come to you with a choice, Cat 5 or Cat 6 cable. You probably have no clue what the difference is, but they tell you one is faster than the other. That is, one conforms to a Cat 5e standard while the other conforms to a Cat 6 standard. This is where the term technical standards comes into play. See, specifications typically refer to technical standards which may be developed by any of a bunch of different kinds of organizations, both public and private. In our case, the specification for Category 5, 5e, and 6 cables were developed by the alphabet soup ANSI/TIA/EIA and defined in Technical Standard 568-A with clarification in TSB 95. These technical standards specify the performance characteristics and test requirements for such cables. But who agrees to the requirements in these standards? Who makes them up? In general, technical standards can be developed by a corporation, a small group of corporations, an industry-wide group of corporations, a national government, including its military, regulatory agencies, and national laboratories and institutes, a professional society, a purpose-made standards organization such as ISO, or it can be a list of vendor-neutral generic requirements. So to get specific, we need to get technical. That's fine and all, but it's surprisingly common for one organization to refer to, that is to say, reference, call out, or cite, the standards of another. So basically, in order to understand one technical organization, you have to buy their friends' technical standards too. And those standards might refer to other standards as well, like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Where does it all stop? But that's the least of it. Most standards are voluntary standards, which a customer, like government or corporation, can decide to place upon bidders and their subcontractors to perform. But voluntary standards may become mandatory standards if adopted by a government or business contract. For example, the National Electric Code, Fire Code, Plumbing Code, Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code are all industry standards that are mandatory by law. But They're all entangled in each other's organizations, and they all have a nice little title of code. Because, let's be honest, you need a translator to figure this stuff out. Well, I get it because I'm smarter than you, but the average Joe, the mom and pop startup? Good luck. They have to hire people like me, an industry insider, to figure it all out for them. Let's try, for example, to figure out the plumbing code. Who makes it, and how do I get a copy of this code? Chasing the plumbing code. In California, the plumbing code has a long, complicated story. Let's check out their website. 2007 California Plumbing Code. Based on the ANSI-accredited American National Standard 2006 Uniform Plumbing Code, the California state amendments have been integrated into a convenient single publication that includes updates and errata pages. Stop. What does all that really say? Well, I'll just use my giant brain to explain as if you were a child, which you might be. ANSI, that is, the American National Standards Institute, accredits, or recognizes the legitimacy of, the American National Standard, quote, Uniform Plumbing Code. The Uniform Plumbing Code. Okay, who publishes that? Let's look this up. Thank you, Wikipedia. Designated as an American national standard, the Uniform Plumbing Code is a model code developed by the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials to govern the installation and inspection of plumbing systems as a means of promoting the public's health, safety, and welfare. How noble of them, if you believe it. At the end of the day, these regulations are just an international racket designed to stifle American businesses and send jobs overseas. But more on that later. How do they develop this code? Okay, the UPC is developed using the American National Standards Institute Consensus Development Procedures. This process brings together volunteers representing a variety of viewpoints and interests to achieve consensus on plumbing practices. Oh, well then great, it must be safe. Wait a second, what is this consensus development process? Well, it's sort of like, let's invite all the plumbing companies and some regulators to give us input on how we should design our plumbing system so it's safe. Well, let's just forget for a moment that half the members of this panel are only in it to make sure their product remains profitable, and they realize that to do that, they need to encourage the standards developing organization to let them cut costs wherever they can and prohibit the use of competing designs. But let's forget this conflict of interest and assume the process is designed to ensure that this doesn't happen, and it remains focused on, public health, safety, and welfare. Back to the California website. What is the alleged purpose of this code? The codes of practice attempt to minimize public risk by specifying technical standards of design, materials, workmanship, and maintenance for plumbing systems. The main aims of the code are to ensure that planners, administrators, and plumbers develop the required competency to ensure that the codes are applied and upheld. Wait, what? It's just plumbing, people! And are you calling me incompetent? That standards are set to ensure that plumbing assemblies, materials, and technologies are safe and effective, according to you. To ensure that plumbing installations meet those standards, you mean to create jobs for inspectors, and to ensure safety and effectiveness continuously through the proper maintenance of these installations. Well, sounds great. But say I'm hired to build a plumbing system in the county of Los Angeles. I got me a copy of the California Plumbing Code. I'm good to go, right? Nope. The county has also got rules too. Let's read them. Except as hereinafter changed or modified, sections of Chapter 1, Division 1 of that certain plumbing code known and designated as the 2016 California Plumbing Code as published by the California Building Standards Commission, they're involved too, are adopted and incorporated by reference into this Title 28 of the Los Angeles County Code. Yada yada yada, except as hereinafter changed or modified chapters 2 through 17 and appendices A, B, D, H, I, and J of that certain plumbing code are adopted by reference and shall be known as chapters 2 through 17 and appendices yada 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 of Title 28 of the Los Angeles County Code. Talk about a run-on sentence. Basically, it says that the California Plumbing Code is being adopted into Title 28 of the Los Angeles County Code. Furthermore, Title 28 of the Los Angeles County Code shall be known as the Los Angeles County Plumbing Code. Alright, so let me get this straight. Title 28 of the Los Angeles County Code, regulated by the county, is also known as the Los Angeles County Plumbing Code. This code modifies the California Plumbing Code, which is Title 24 of the California Code of Regulations, published by, or more accurately, regulated by, the California Building Standards Commission, which, research shows, delegates actual printing and publication of this code to the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials, who creates and updates the American National Standard known as the Uniform Plumbing Code, whose review process is regulated by the American National Standards Institute, and I imagine there's one more level of complication for whichever city I decide to build in, but I won't go there. So how the F am I supposed to know all this? They don't teach this stuff in school. Not grade school, not high school, and not college. And yet, I'm just supposed to know all this? Did you ever notice how law is generally omitted from the public curriculum? How generally you're expected to educate yourself on law instead of, I don't know, maybe being taught about it? Leaving high school, I knew more about Christopher Columbus than I did about our legal system, or city, county, municipal, and federal law. I wasn't even taught how to pay taxes. How do you expect people to pay their taxes when you don't even teach it in school? The system is set up for failure, and this is the public school system we all pay into. Eventually, I'm gonna make a whole video about that, but I digress. Let's ask the most important question. Where do I even get a copy of this code? Well, luckily I could find it free online because I'm smarter than you. But I'm not sure that that's true for all laws on the books. Well, at least this one is free. But what if I wanted to use it? Let's open to, say, Chapter 12. Plastic pipe, tubing, and fitting shall be used outside underground only and shall conform with ASTM D2513 standard specification for thermoplastic gas pressure pipe, tubing, and fitting. What does it mean to conform to ASTM D2513? Let me Google that. Aha! ASTM D2513. Let me read buy. Buy? Buy for $52 hard or digital? Aha! That's where they get you. The code is free, but I have to shell out $52 if I want to know what it means to conform with ASTM D2513. Otherwise, I might be breaking the law. How about aluminum tubing? Same page. ASTM B210. $52. And steel tubing? $41. Copper tubing? $46. Anodeless risers? Is that even a word? Another $46. Just to decode one page of this free code, I have to spend $293, plus tax I'm sure, and shipping if I want a hard copy. And what's this NFPA they keep citing? NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association. Let's go to their website. The leading information and knowledge resource on fire, electrical, and related hazards. Wait, how is this related to plumbing? Oh wait, what's this? The National Electric Code? Do they regulate that too? Yup, that's NFPA 70. Ugh. And how big is that one? And how much does it cost? I mean, come on. How can I afford all this? Just to read one code, I need thousands of dollars and thousands of hours to pour through these requirements. No one man can know all this. It's not possible. And you certainly can't get into business without a huge amount of upfront capital, or, as you'll notice, without being an industry insider. And that's the idea behind all this regulation. They're trying to keep those in the know in power, and those that don't know broke. It's like either I hire a plumber and he works for a corporation that can afford to stock all these codes and retains a set of lawyers to ensure compliance, or I can try to fix a leak at home by myself by paying thousands of dollars and reading and remembering thousands of pages of documents just to make sure I don't break the law or something. I mean, come on! That's what we're talking about, people. This country has gone to shit with overregulation. Keep it simple, stupid. And all these codes require a certain level of, quote, competency. But what they're actually trying to say is, I'm incompetent and education has become some sort of barrier to entry. Education should not be a barrier to entry in any field. Except, let me rephrase that. What I'm saying is that requiring a certain level of competency of the designers and workers in a field. Requiring this level of competency of designers and workers is just too much. I mean, I don't know everything that's in every code, but I get along just fine without knowing it. It's not like if I don't buy products that follow the National Electric Code, I'm gonna set fire to my house at Christmas. Alright, maybe that was a bad example. But if I wanted to build an elevator by myself and I didn't know there was a code for that, what's the worst that could happen? Alright, another bad example. But if I were to buy galvanized steel pipe from India without that stamp indicating that it's ASTM A whatever, grade whatever, and supply it for that multi-million-dollar project, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, it's not guaranteed that the pipe is junk. It might be the right pipe for the application. Who are you to say that it's not? Anyway, listen, my point is, it's all an elaborate conspiracy. You don't believe me? You don't think this country is over-regulated? Imagine the money to be made if a small group of companies decided to write these standards to favor only their products. Think it's not possible? Well, let me tell you about the infamous Perry Memo. In the US, during the 1980s and early 90s, it was argued that the large number of defense standards, nearly 30,000 by 1990, imposed unnecessary restrictions, increased cost to contractors and hence the DoD, since the costs in the end pass along to the customer, and impeded the incorporation of the latest technology. Responding to increasing criticism, Secretary of Defense William Perry issued a memorandum in 1994 that prohibited the use of defense standards without a waiver. That's right, that's nearly 30,000 standards banned from use unless you had a waiver to actually use them. This has become known as the Perry Memo. Many defense standards were cancelled. In their place, the DoD encouraged the use of industry standards such as ISO 9000 series for quality assurance, SAE standards such as the Aerospace Standards and Aerospace Materials Spec series. Weapon systems were required to use performance specifications that described the desired features and performance of the weapon as opposed to how these goals would be reached. It wasn't until 2005 that the DoD issued a new memorandum, which eliminated the requirement to obtain a waiver in order to use these defense standards. But the damage had been done. The 2005 memo did not reinstate any canceled defense standards. Wikipedia, so it's true. This is the kind of real-world shit that proves conspiracies do exist, and they do. Well, actually, we're using the term incorrectly in this case. See, conspiracy is when two or more people plan to commit a crime. But none of this was illegal. The military contractors who wrote these onerous specs weren't doing anything illegal, so it's not a conspiracy. See how they'll always play semantics in this sort of thing? And because it was really a small band of, quote, competitors who worked together to win these bids, the proper word is collusion, which itself is sometimes illegal. But because the work is done under the guise of public safety, it's much harder to prove. Collusion is an agreement between two or more parties, sometimes illegal and therefore secretive, to limit open competition by deceiving, misleading, or defrauding others of their legal rights. Wikipedia. And sure, most of these standards are well-meaning, but every single industry standard is susceptible to this type of collusion. But, admittedly, that doesn't mean we don't need them. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. My wife told me that after I accidentally performed an abortion. Just kidding, we never married. In my next video, I walk you through the long, sad history of the well-meaning boiler and pressure vessel code, according to them, to give you some hope and show you why we need some regulation. Sometimes. I know this one ran a little long, but I needed to let you know how complicated it is to be an engineer, a contractor, a small business owner, a standards developing organization, a regulator, a lawyer, a spec writer, a manufacturer, an educator, an American. I know it's a complicated system, but it's working. Stick with me here because this is extremely important. With regulation, lives are at stake. You're going to want to listen to the next video, so please subscribe, hit that bell icon, support me on Patreon, and hit that replay button because you're going to need a second viewing to truly digest this video. It is chock full of information, which is typical of my videos because, as always, I'm smarter than you.